Hi, and welcome back for the fifth and final section of this lesson. I've really been looking forward to this section, in which we work to really tie everything that we've done earlier into a way that allows you to create a complete program instead of just simple snippets like we've been doing so far. In this section, we will be exploring how to create functions with our code. These functions can then be the building blocks for even more complex behaviors. We'll start nice and easy with a simple introduction to functions in this video, where we will talk about what a function is and why we might use them. We'll create a simple yet practical example that we can later reuse in various exercises. We'll also talk about return values and arguments. After introducing you to functions, we'll move on to anonymous functions, where we'll learn how to use lambda functions to encompass simple behaviors, as well as how to use functools partial and what the difference between them is. After that, we will learn about function decorators. We'll explore some of the built-in decorators, as well as learn how they work and how to write our own decorators. We'll also take a look at some of the more advanced functionality of decorators, where we'll look at passing in arguments to decorators and using classes as decorators. After we've thoroughly explored functions, we'll talk about how you can document your functions using docstrings. This is a valuable process, and it will help you understand your code easily in the future, as well as providing a quick and simple way to generate documentation and run some simple unit tests at the same time. And finally, we'll talk about how you can combine many related functions into classes and even modules to better facilitate reuse and sharing of our code. Alright, finally, let's go ahead and get started. This is the very first video of this section, Introduction to Functions. In this video, we will introduce the concept of functions and how to use them through simple and practical examples. What is a function and why would we use them? We use functions to help us simplify complicated code. We also use functions to avoid repeating similar blocks of code, to encapsulate functionality in a reusable component. Let's take an example where we might want a user to pick a number between 1 and 100, perhaps for a guessing game. We could simply ask a user to enter a value between 1 and 100. After we ask the user for a value, we would need to check to make sure the value is valid. We do this by saying, if our value is not between 1 and 100, then this is invalid input, and so we'll print that. Now, we might get a value error, in which case we would want to tell the user that they input something that wasn't an integer. And finally, if we made it past both of those checks, we would have a valid value, and we could say if value is equal to our number, print you win. Otherwise, now hopefully you can see that there's some problems here already. A, we're not doing anything in the case that we have invalid input here. And we're not doing anything in the case that we have invalid input here. And if we win or if we lose, we're not doing anything like going back and asking the user again. This is a really good candidate for something that we could convert into a function, and in fact, several functions. Let's go ahead and try and give it a whirl. Now, you can imagine if we had to repeatedly ask them and we weren't using a function, there would be a whole lot of copying and pasting and identical code. So, let's go ahead and take a simple example that we'll call getValidInput. Let's go ahead and make a function called getValidInput, and it'll take a prompt. This is the message that we want to display to the user when they input invalid values. And then we want to take a validator function. And in here, we'll say while true, our result is going to be equal to input prompt And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to try and check our prompt or our result against our validator function. So we're going to say if validator function result. So if they gave us a result that matches our validator, whatever that is, we're going to talk about what that is, don't worry. Whatever that is, then we're going to go ahead and we're just going to return our result. And in the other case, we need to return our result. And in any other case, we just want to go ahead and pass. And if it's not, or if we hit this pass, we want to go ahead and we want to print our error message. And this way, when we get out of here, we'll have valid input, whatever valid means for us. Now, in this case, we want a valid integer that's between 1 and 100. So let's go ahead and write that validator. And it will take a result, or an X, and we'll just go ahead and we'll try 1 is less than or equal to our number, which is less than or equal to 100. In the case that we get a value error, then it's not a valid number, and we're just going to go ahead and we're going to return false. Well, let's go ahead and we'll give them an out. We'll let them say if x.lower is equal to q for quit, then we'll return true. This will let us get out of our loop. If the user wants to type q to exit, then we'll let them. Now we can go ahead and we can get our guess here instead of value. We can say guess is equal to get valid input, and we give it our prompt, and we'll say or q to exit. And we want to say that is not an integer, and then we're going to give it our valid integer between 1 and 100 as our control. Notice that we do not call our function. We're passing it in. We're going to let our get valid input call it if it needs to right here. So you don't actually call that function. You're just passing a reference to it. Now, when we get our guess back, we know for sure that that's an integer between 1 and 100, or it's the letter Q. Now, it's not in integer form. It's in string form when we get it back, and that's fine. And so now we can go ahead and we can say my number, and we're going to say is equal to, let's just say 78. So we know what our number is, but we're cheating a little bit. We're going to say while int guess is not equal to my number, then we'll ask them to pick a value, and then we'll say if guess equals q. So if we wanted to quit, then we're just going to say print okay, goodbye, and then we'll do a sys.exit. Now, I didn't import sys, so I do need to go ahead and say import sys here at the top. Otherwise, we're going to keep trying to guess and say if we can just make this true. We'll say otherwise guess is equal to an int of our guess. Say if guess is less than my number, print try a higher value. If guess is greater than our number, we want to print the same thing, but lower. Else if our guess is equal to our number, we'll go ahead and print you win. Now we can take this whole thing and we can make a game out of it. And instead of setting it to 78, we'll just set it to our target value. Now we can just call play guessing game and give it 85, and we'll play a guessing game where the goal is to guess the number 85. Now, it would be just as easy to go ahead and play guessing game with random.randint 1 to 100, and let the computer pick a number. So there we go. What we've done here is we've created a function to validate a valid integer between 1 and 100. We've created a function to get valid input, where it'll take a validator function that we define. And we've created a function to play a single guessing game. And down here, we're going to go ahead and play that guessing game. There we go, we won our 85. Now let's guess what the computer gave us. I could have used binary search when picking these numbers and it would get a little bit better, but it's clearly higher. Oh, I'm stuck in a while true here. Let's go ahead and just return once we win. Go ahead and run that. Again, 85 will get us a win. Now we're going to play what the computer gives us, which hopefully isn't 85. Wants an even higher value. 95. Oh, well, how about 90? And 89 it's got to be. Woohoo! We win! We beat the computer. Alright, that about wraps up our introduction to functions. We've created a simple guessing game and used some functions to facilitate that.